Happy 4th of July. I am very pleased to be with you today to open the Word. We live in an age that desperately needs prophets. Just think of this country, this world in the past 18 months. We need prophets. I know much of the Bible is written metaphorically, but when Ezekiel describes his calling, I think he speaks literally. A spirit entered into me and set me on my feet. Set me on my feet. That will get one's attention. Ezekiel states, I heard the Holy One speaking to me. I am sending you to the people of Israel, a rebellious people who have revolted against me. Again, no glossing this over. He is in the unenviable situation every prophet faces. In order to be faithful to the revelation they have received, they must stand in opposition to their own people. Ezekiel must perform that function for Israel, then living under Babylonian rule. Knowing that his people will not be open to God's overtures, he can only hope that even a few will be receptive. God's words are not optimistic. The ones to whom I am sending you are defiant and stubborn. In our second reading, we find a somewhat frustrated Paul as he speaks to the people of Corinth in preparation for his journey there. My impression of Paul is that he was a proud, confident man, but a man who he himself admits carried a weakness. Scholars continue to theorize on the nature of the weakness. While we don't know what it was, it shows us that God does not choose the ideal human being to carry his word. God speaks to Paul and states, my grace is enough for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Paul accepts this and tells the Corinthians, and so now I am willing to boast of my weakness. I am content with weakness, insult, hardship, persecutions, and difficulties for the sake of Christ. For when I am powerless, it is then that I am strong. He faces his weakness, but that in itself is part of the message. In the final section of the second reading, Pope Francis gives us further prophets to consider. He refers to Abraham Lincoln, not a usual reference from a Catholic pope, Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day, Thomas Merton, all prophets in very unique ways. And then we turn to our beloved prophet Jesus. Even in his hometown synagogue, he is scorned. Men and possibly women who had known him since he was a boy are asking, where did he get all this? What kind of wisdom is he endowed? Is this the carpenter, the son of Mary? And the disturbing next line, they took offense at him. Why? Just consider the words from Mark's gospel last Sunday, where Jesus heals a woman who had been bleeding for 12 years and brings a 12-year-old girl back to life. Is this not enough to cause a sense of awe and wonder? We don't know the inner thoughts of Jesus at this point, but he had to be thinking, what more do they want? But instead, Jesus utters the words of so many prophets. Prophets are not without honor, except in their hometown, among their own kin, in their own house. These are the words of one who knows he must continue his work, but without the support of his most familiar friends and neighbors. This leads us to consider our prophets today. Are they speaking to a blank wall? Do their own people even acknowledge them? During this COVID time, I think of Dr. Anthony Fauci as one of my prophets, speaking truth to power, relying on science, which is also the word of God, advising a recalcitrant administration on ways to address the problem, and not being heard. According to the American people, speaking to the American people like a devoted but frustrated father. How different our lives and the lives of our friends and relatives might have been if only we had listened to him from the onset. As I reflect on the past 18 months, I think of the impact of the murder of George Floyd and the recent sentence of Derek Chauvin for 22 years and 6 months. During these past months, we heard many prophets, Floyd's family and friends, his little 7-year-old daughter, Gianna, the teenager, Darnella Fraser, who had taken her small cousin to Cup Foods for a treat and used her cell phone to record the 9-minute video that rocked the world. The 2 prosecuting attorneys, Matthew Frank and Jerry Blackwell, as well as Judge Peter Cahill, who let justice rule. Unlikely prophets, but they were all working in their own way for the undoing of deep, persistent racism. And during these scorching days of June and July, we can't help but think of global warming. Another unlikely prophet in today's world is the young Swedish woman, Greta Thunberg, who, like Paul, suffers from a weakness, Asperger's syndrome, but she does not allow that to deter her. She has spoken to the World Economic Forum in Davos, to the European Parliament, to the United Nations, among others. Listen to her words. You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? Greta is a justifiably angry prophet. So as we spend the next 10 or so minutes together in our small groups, think of the people who have been prophets to you. What messages do they send? How do they motivate you to act on their words? Most of all, how can you be a prophet today?